How do you annihilate an entire naval air force in a single day while losing almost none of your own? On June 19, 1944, the Imperial Japanese Navy discovered the terrifying answer in one of the most lopsided air battles in history. Subscribe for more untold World War II stories. This is the story of how American ingenuity unleashed a new predator over the Pacific, the Grumman F6F Hellcat. The myth of the Invincible Zero was crushed that day, and the course of the war in the Pacific was changed forever. Only 3 years earlier, the story had been very different. In December 1941, the Zero ripped across the skies of Pearl Harbor, sleek, fast, and impossibly agile. It seemed untouchable. It outturned, outran, and outclimbed every American plane, carving its legend in fire across the Pacific. For young Allied aviators flying stubby, underpowered F4F Wildcats, every engagement felt like suicide. The lesson was brutal and clear. If America wanted to survive, it needed more than courage. It needed a new weapon. By mid-1942, engineers at Grumman Aircraft began sketching an answer, guided by the desperate combat reports of pilots who had barely survived encounters with the Zero. The design philosophy was stark. Forget trying to outturn the Zero. The new fighter would not be a dancer, it would be a brawler. Thus, the F6F Hellcat was born. It was a machine built like a flying fortress, with an armored cockpit, self-sealing fuel tanks, and 6 heavy .50 caliber machine guns. Powered by a 2,000 horsepower engine, it was not delicate or subtle. It was survival on wings. But machines alone don't win wars. Behind every Hellcat stood the relentless engine of American industry. While Japan struggled to replace a few dozen planes a month, U.S. factories were building thousands. While Japanese flight schools cut training hours to scraps, American cadets graduated with over 300 hours in the cockpit. By 1944, the balance had shifted. The Zero was no longer the hunter, it was the hunted. The stage was set in the Mariana Islands, a strategically priceless chain that held the key to launching bomber strikes on Japan itself. To defend them, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa prepared a counterstroke with 9 carriers and every pilot Japan could scrape together. On the other side, Admirals Raymond Spruance and Mark Mitcher assembled the might of Task Force 58, 15 fast carriers, hundreds of ships, and nearly 1,000 aircraft, most of them Hellcats. The difference was stark. One side fought with experience, superior numbers, and machines built to dominate. The other fought with dwindling hope, fragile aircraft, and pilots who were often boys with less than 50 hours of flight time. The order came at 8:30 on June 19th. Launch all fighters. Hellcats were hurled from their catapults, rising to meet the enemy. The first Japanese wave of over 80 aircraft was met by American pilots armed with a new, brutal doctrine: boom and zoom. They were to use their altitude and speed to dive on the enemy, strike hard, and climb away before the more agile Zeros could force a turning dogfight. The battle erupted across 30 miles of sky. The Hellcats slashed through the Japanese formations, their 6.50 caliber guns shredding the fragile Zeros. The first wave was shattered. Then came the second, with 120 aircraft. It too was broken. The third wave was composed of pilots so green they could barely hold formation. The fourth was a collection of scraps, training planes, and obsolete bombers. They were all annihilated. By the end of the day, the sky was silent. The once crowded airspace was empty, save for smoke and wreckage. The final tally was staggering. Nearly 400 Japanese aircraft had been destroyed. American losses were fewer than 30. The kill ratio was better than 14-1. The men of Task Force 58 would later give the battle a grim, fitting name: the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japan had lost more than planes. It had lost its irreplaceable veteran air crews, the elite force that had carried its empire across the Pacific. On June 19, 1944, Japanese naval aviation died. The Hellcat had not just won a battle, it had ended an era. By the war's end, the F6F Hellcat would be credited with more than 5,000 enemy aircraft destroyed, achieving one of the highest kill ratios in aviation history. It stood as a symbol of a nation that had learned from its bloody lessons and had forged a weapon not just of revenge, but of total supremacy.